Okay, well, my name is Bhakta Tayler, and I'm going to be giving class today. Mukunda and Amoga are in India, so they can't give class. And Balaram and Saul went to a home program, so they can't give class. And Bob and Govardhan are in the kitchen, so they can't give class. And Dimitri's there, so he can't give class. So tonight I have to give class. So this is my first class, and I don't have many realizations. So I would like to share with you what Prabhupada has taught us about a very nice topic, which we find in the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 14. So tonight we're going to talk about the three modes of material nature. But first, let's set the stage. So we'll sing Jaya Radha Madhava very briefly, so we could sing along. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai. So Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Gina Timanandasya Jananjanan Chalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guve Namah. Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhuevyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the three modes of material nature, that's what we're entangled in here in this material world. It's material nature because the world we live in is made of matter, and matter is temporary. It doesn't exist eternally. But yet we're Satchidananda, we're eternal spirit souls that are temporarily embodied in this physical body, which all of matter is born, it gets old, it gets sick, and it dies. And that happens through the process of the material modes, which are, a distant energy of Krishna that's set up just to kind of let us enjoy separately from him in this temporary world. So when I began reading the Gita for the first few times, I really found this chapter was nice in terms of preaching, because you can talk to a layperson about this topic and they have some relatability to it. Some of the other esoterics are kind of philosophical topics. It's very hard to relate to somebody on the street with. But everybody has direct experience interacting with the modes. And there's many different ways you can look at them, how the three different modes affect us throughout the time of day, throughout the consciousness we have, throughout the type of nature we have. So I thought that this would be a really good gateway in terms of preaching to people, talking to them about the various modes. So because I have very little realization, and I'm a very young Bhakta, I would just want to stick with what Prabhupada taught us. So we're going to read there's only a 20-page chapter, it's very short, so we'll read the text from it. Then, in the studies of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the graduate study of Bhagavad Gita that really encapsulates the essence. Right now, during Bhagavatam class, we're in the 6th canto, the Ajamil story. It's very, very nice. And I'm reading ahead in that, and I found a part in the 4th chapter of the 6th canto, a text that really gives great detail about how the modes are actually working and how we can view them. So I wanted to share that. And then we have this book on the bookshelf in the lobby. This is a nice book that talks about the laws of nature, an infallible justice. And it gives a nice understanding of how the modes operate by a very specific set of laws that happen almost automatically. But Prabhupada does something really wonderful at the end. He gives us what he calls the peace formula. So it kind of shows us, hey, we're in this world is temporary. He calls it an awkward situation. But knowing how these modes interact, knowing how we should view them, there's actually a formula that we can use to actually try to develop a relationship with the modes in a sense that we can ascend through them to the mode of goodness, sattva gun, achieve shuddha sattva, pure goodness, and then we're on the doorstep of bhakti, which is transcendental to the modes. So if you're already situated in pure bhakti, you don't even have to take this class, you're fine. You don't have to worry about the modes. But Prabhupada transcended the modes because he's a guru, and guru has a special potency. They are not diluted by Maya. So we can see here very expertly how the material modes dilute us to make us think that we're this material body and that we're actually enjoying. So we'll begin by reading the text, and then we'll have some reflections, and then we'll move through these other books. Okay, so the three modes of material nature, chapter 14 of Bhagavad Gita. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again, I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own." Okay, well, we can read along. So this is 532. Page 532, but we're on 14.2. So Krishna has just said to Arjuna, he's going to declare again to you the supreme wisdom. See, the way the Bhagavad Gita works is it's like 3 sections. So the first 6 chapters are really kind of setting up, karma. They're setting up the different types of yogas you can practice. And then the middle chapters are leading up to chapter 12, which is devotional service. They're talking more about who Krishna is. Krishna displays that he's supreme, and then he shows how devotion to him is important. Now, these last 6 chapters, it's kind of like you're already a devotee, and now you're interacting with the world, and it's teaching you all these really wonderful things that help you. The modes, the divine and demoniac nature, the different types of religious practices we can do in terms of developing faith. And then at the end, it teaches us renunciation. So he's already described some very wonderful things to us, Krishna. So he's telling Arjuna, again, I shall describe to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection. So text 2. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. The total material substance, called Brahman, is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. Material nature consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So this is good in terms of the Sanskrit, the actual shloka, because you see right in the beginning, you see sattva gun, rajagun, tamagun. So if you look at the definition, sattvam, the mode of goodness, rajaha, the mode of passion, and tamaha, the mode of ignorance. So we say sattva gun, tamagun, rajagun, mode of ignorance at the bottom, mode of passion in the middle, mode of goodness up top. Material nature consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So just by coming into contact with the material world, the modes govern us. That's what I found so interesting in what we'll read in Srimad Bhagavatam. Just by taking birth in this material world, we don't have any freedom. The material modes are orchestrating. If you see the cover of this book, they're puppeteers. Do you see the 3 modes here? They're playing the jiva like a marionette? They have the strings attached to us, and they just kind of shift us through the different modes. So Krishna will make this point that we think that we're the doer, but it's just the modes interacting amongst us. So that's why it's so important that we transcend the modes and at least take shelter of a bona fide guru who's already transcended the modes and isn't being diluted by Maya.
Which chapter and verse are you on?
So we're on 14.4, and we're about to move to, we're on 14.5, and now we're about to move to 14.6. Jai. Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. I guess I'll say 6. So,
is also different because this is,
yeah.
this is the hardbound and he is paper.
Sistra, up top, you can see right here, right in the gap, you'll see 14, you'll see the chapter and the verse. So go to 14.6.
14:6?
Yeah, you'll see.
6, yeah.
So I'll say the text numbers too when I go.
We can read the Sanskrit text also.
Can you, it'll be, okay.
So you want me to read 14:6?
Yeah, yeah.
Tatra satvam nirmal tvat prakashakam manayam namayam sukha sangen badnati jnana sangen chanagati.
Beautiful. So, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. You don't need? We're online, I guess. So, and your Sanskrit was so nice. So, right off the bat, he's introducing the modes, Krishna, and he's glorifying the mode of goodness. But he's saying it's purer than the others, because the mode of goodness is still a trap. When we reach the mode of goodness, it's very nice because we're not committing so many sins. But if we get comfortable in the mode of goodness, we become prideful, we become attached to the happiness that's there. We might think that we've done our work, but we're trying to get into pure goodness. So we're going to move on to 7.
Chapter 14, text 7. Rajo ragatmakam vidhi trishna sangam samsamudbham tanni bhadanati kaunteya karma sangen dehinam.
Jai. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive activities. Text 8.
Tamastva jnanajanam vidhi mohanam. Sorry. Tamastva jnanajam vidhi mohanam sarvadehinam pramadal syanidra bhisti nibadhanati bharata.
So here's Tamas, here's Tamaha, Tamagun. So we're getting to the mode of ignorance here. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Text 9.
Satvam sukhe sanjayati rajha karmani bharata jnanama vritya tu tamaha pramade sanjaya tayut.
O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. Passion conditions one to fruitive action. And ignorance, covering one knowledge, bind ones to madness. Text 10.
Rajastama scha bhuya satvam bhavati bharata rajaha satvam tamaschaiva tamaha satvam rajastatha.
Sometimes the mode of passion becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharata. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. Text 11. Sarvadwareshu dehe asmi n prakash upajayate jnanam yada tada vidya dvivibridham sattva mitayuta. The manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. And this is actually pretty interesting. I'm going to read the purport to this because when I first read that, I said, oh, wow, the mode of goodness is so purifying that it actually illuminates the 9 gates of your body. And so before I read the purport, I was trying to think, okay, what are these gates? You know, like gates are portals to your body, things that go in and out. So you can illuminate those parts of you by the mode of goodness, which gives us very good knowledge. So there are 9 gates in the body: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, the mouth, the genitals, and the anus. When every gate is illuminated by the symptoms of goodness, it should be understood that one has developed the mode of goodness. In the mode of goodness, one can see things in the right position. One can hear things in the right position, and one can taste things in the right position. One becomes cleansed inside and out. In every gate there is development of the symptoms of happiness, and that is the position of goodness. And so I was thinking that as devotees, it's really nice because all those gates are engaged in Krishna's service. Because, we have our eyes to read scripture and to look at the deities. We have our ears to hear katha and kirtan. We have nostrils in the morning. We smell incense. We smell nice essential oils. We smell the nice happenings, the flowers that come off the altar. The mouth tastes prasadam. And then the genitals and the anus, we don't have to worry about that because we practice chastity and we eat a nice diet. So all of that stuff is taken care of by devotional service. So when you see the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance, these are people that aren't necessarily practicing bhakti yoga, and you see how that can actually harm your body or degrade your consciousness out of the mode of goodness. Text 12.
Lobha pravrittirarambha karmana mashamha sapriha rajas yatani jayante vivriddhi bhartarshbha.
O chief of the Bharats, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptom of great attachment, fruit of activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. Text 13.
Aprakasho apravrittischa pramado moh evacha tamaseyatani jayante vivriddhi kuru nandana.
When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. Text 14.
Yada sattve pravriddhe tu pralayam yati dehi bhrit tadottama vidam lokan namalan pratipadyate.
When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages. Text 15.
Rajasi pralayam gatva karmasangishu jayate tatha pralinastamasi mood yonishu jayate.
When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom. Text 16.
Karmanaha sukrit sayahu satvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu phalam dukh magyanam tamasaha phalam.
The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness. But action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. This is a pretty good example of what happens with the modes, because if you're acting in the mode of goodness, you're not incurring sin because you're acting purely. If you're in the mode of passion, you're just generating more and more desires. And if we're trying to satisfy our desires by material interactions with nature, we become frustrated. As Maharaj says, if you try to enjoy the material nature, it either burns or doesn't last. And then the reason the mode of ignorance creates foolishness is you're losing your intelligence. And so if you see in the text before that, text 15, when you die in the mode of ignorance, you take birth in the animal kingdom. Because you're training yourself in this life not to make use of the human form of life. The human form of life is very, very, very rare. And to misuse it, to slip into the mode of ignorance, isn't good, because what you're actually doing is just preparing yourself for an animal body. And it takes a very long time to come out of the animal kingdom back to human birth. So it's important that while we're humans, we practice the mode of goodness and develop more transcendental knowledge so that we can attain higher and higher births. Like it says in the text before that, we attain to the pure higher planets of the great sages. So if you stay in the mode of passion, you just keep being born on planets like Earth, and you just do fruitive activities all the time, which ultimately is frustrating, and it's kind of an endless cycle. Yes, you're not an animal, but you're also not on the heavenly planets, and you're just chasing something which is phantasmagoria. It's actually not lasting, so you'll just continue being frustrated by this material nature. So we're on text 17.
Satvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobh evacha pramad moho tamso bhavato jnanam evacha.
From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. And from the mode of ignorance develops foolishness, madness, and delusion. Text 18.
Urdhvam gachanti satvastha मध्ये तिष्ठन्ति राजसाः उघन्य गुणवृत्तिस्था अधो गच्छति तामसाः.
Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. So this is making a stronger statement against the mode of ignorance, because you're taking animal birth, but then you'll probably end up in the hellish worlds, which is a very bad place to be, as we learned at the end of the last canto during our Bhagavatam studies. If you have any questions about whether it's good to be in the mode of ignorance, read the end of the 5th canto, and it'll show you where you're headed. And don't get trapped in the subterranean heavenly planets. They're actually not much better. These heavenly planets are good too, because you have nice facility there and longer lives, and if you eventually ascend upward, like it says, gradually go upward, you can achieve Brahma Loka. So Brahma will actually train you. But there's even a danger there that when the dissolution occurs, you're actually not going to make it to the spiritual world. So it's actually best to be on this planet, where there's not too much heaven, not too much hell, and practice Krishna consciousness. So the main thing for us is we got to make sure we don't get stuck in the mode of passion here. So text number 19.
नान्यं गुणेभ्यः कर्तारं यदा दृष्टानुपश्यति गुणेभ्यश्च परं वेति मद्भावं सो अधिगच्छति.
When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature. So that's what we're getting at in the very beginning when Krishna was telling Arjuna, hey, I'm going to tell you again this important science that sages can not come back to this earth from. We're starting to recognize now, okay, these are the modes. If you properly see that in everything you do, it's just these modes, but you know that there's a Supreme Lord, transcendental these modes, who's behind it, you can attain to the spiritual nature, which is the same nature that we are as jivas, Sat Chit Ananda. So by disengaging from interactions with the material modes, disengaging our senses from those sense objects, we begin to experience more and more that we're actually a transcendental jiva temporarily within this body, and we can focus more on attaining the nature of Krishna because we're part and parcel of him. Text number 20.
Guna netan titya त्रिदेही देह समुद्भवान जन्म मृत्यु जरा दुखैर विमुक्तो अमृत मशुनते.
When the embodied being is able to transcend these 3 modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life. So that's what we're talking about, matter. If anything born of matter is born of molecules, and molecules have a finite life because they're born, they get old, they get sick, and then they die. But if we're not interacting with matter that's temporary, we can enjoy the eternal, the Ananda aspect of us, which is bliss. We can enjoy nectar even in this life. Text 21.
Arjuna Vach, Kerli enge strin guna netan tito bhavati prabho kimacharaha katham chaitan strin guna natir vartate.
So here Arjuna is inquiring. He's listened to Krishna, who's acting as his guru here. He's asking very nice questions. And this is going to set up the end of the chapter here. So Arjuna is asking him, oh my dear Lord, by which symptoms is one known who is transcendental to these 3 modes? What is his behavior? And how does he transcend the modes of nature? Text 22 through 25.
Shri Bhagavan Uvach, Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva cha pandava na dveshti sampravritani na nivratani kankshati. Udasino gunairyo na vichalyate gunavartant ityevam yovatishtati nengate. Sam dukha sukha swastha samaloshtash mankachana kanchanaha tulya priya priyo dhirastula ninda तम संस्थिति ही मानापमानो योस्तुल्य स्तुल्यो मित्रारिपक्षयोः सर्वारंभ परित्यागी गुणातीतः उच्यते.
Jai, that was a long one. Thank you for that. Okay, so here we go. The Supreme Personality Godhead is answering Arjuna's inquiry. O son of Pandu, he does not hate illumination. He who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear. who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable, who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature. Now that's a big prescription for someone to follow. There's a lot there that doesn't come natural to us, especially before we became Krishna conscious. It's very hard to praise both friend and enemy alike, to not be disturbed in desirable and undesirable conditions, to be steady, to look at happiness and distress the same, you know? But the thing is, if you're in contact with the eternal, that's not wavering. See, this is duality here. Everything they said is different ends of the spectrum. So the person who's fixed with Krishna is steady, right down the middle. They have their routine. It works for them. They're not agitated by these things. They're gradually realizing who the self is, and the self is part and parcel with Krishna. And so that's how you're able to achieve this. It's not on your own strength. It's on the strength that Krishna empowers you with in relation to the surrender that you've given to Krishna and the strength of your bhakti and your sadhana. And that's why it's great that we're here today, because we're practicing this very nicely. We had a very nice kirtan. Now we're having some very poor quality katha based on my shortcomings. And then afterwards, there'll be some very nice prasadam. And this all helps the process. So let's move on. We're going to have a couple more answers to Arjuna's questions. We're on text 26.
मां च योग व्यभिचारेण भक्ति योगेन सेवते स गुणा न समतीत्या यतान ब्रह्म भूयाय कल्पते.
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So it's Brahman realization because it's first level realization. You've realized, okay, everything in this material world is emanating from the toenail reflection of the sunlight of Krishna. You know, everything here is Krishna. I've realized that. And then from that, you can begin to move into higher levels of realization that Krishna is in all of our hearts, and then eventually Krishna is a person. So if we engage in devotional service, unfailing no matter what happens, we transcend the modes of material nature and come to the level of Brahman. And actually, I was learning this pretty recently. I think it might have been with Govardhan, but we were saying that like when you put in distress doing devotional service, that's a really good time to double down on your service and see it through and not be agitated. Because if you're doing service to Krishna, he's got your back. It's going to work out. And he likes a little bit of drama. Krishna likes to mix it up a little bit and test you and see what you can handle. So they're saying here, unfailing in all circumstances. Because sometimes, especially when you're putting on festivals, or you're making BBT runs, or you're cooking for a bunch of people, little things happen that make you go, oh, why, Krishna? But you got to say, what's the drama here? What's the play? What's actually happening? I have faith in Krishna. I'm under his protection. He knows what's best for me. Maybe I'm supposed to make a minor sharp left or deviation, and actually this thing's going to become more dynamic than I ever thought possible. So I realize that it's during those moments of distress or chaos or things like that, that opportunity arises. And if you roll with it, then you begin to see Krishna is doing something much more broader and magical than you actually thought in your kind of narrow vision of like, all right, this is the service I'm going to offer Krishna. So knowing that, we can be unfailing, and if we can do that, then we transcend the modes of nature, come to the level of Brahman. And also there's this purification part too, where like, you know, we're all coming out of material nature mostly, unless you're born a Brahmin and stayed a Brahmin. So when you begin practicing devotional service, there's still karma, and that karma will come and has to be burned off, but it's burned off very mercifully by Krishna while we're doing devotional service. So when these things come to us, what you're supposed to say is, actually, Krishna, I've done a lot worse than what's happening right now, but by your mercy, I'm not experiencing the full weight of the punishment that was due to me. So we thank Krishna, actually, when problems come our way, or we have issues. You know, as long as we stick to devotional service and don't rip off our dhotis and go run to the beach and scream, why me? As long as you stay in devotional service, Krishna's got your back. You're either burning off your karma or he's teaching you something really wonderful. And ideally, he's teaching us how to transcend the modes of material nature and come to the level of Brahman. So text 27.
Brahmano hi pratishthaham mritasya yavyayasya cha शाश्वतस्य च धर्मस्य सुखसयैकान्तिकस्य च.
So we just said that you'll come to the level of Brahman. Now Krishna is defining that as himself. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. And so that will end this chapter. Thank you so much for being with it. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam, very nicely in the studies that I had in this last week, gave us this really, really wonderful text and purport that's going to take everything we just learned and synthesize it in a nice way. So Prabhu, if you could read the Sanskrit here. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 6. This is text, this is Canto 6, chapter 4, text 29.
Devanagari script? Oh, yeah, that can be this. Yadyaniruktam vachasa nirupatim dhiyaksha bhirva manasota yasya bhabhutasya swarupam gunarupam hi tatatta savai guna paya visarga lakshanaha. Thank you, Prabhu. So this will be kind of just a meditation because I know we're not following along with it. So this is interesting. So anything expressed by material vibrations, anything ascertained by material intelligence, and anything experienced by the material senses or concocted within the material mind is but an effect of the modes of material nature, and therefore has nothing to do with the real nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is beyond the creation of this material world, for He is the source of the material qualities and creation. As the cause of all causes, He exists before the creation and after the creation. I wish to offer my respectful obeisances unto Him. You could probably transcend the modes by just reading that every single day, because you're offering your respects to Him as, everything. You're saying to Him, He's everything. We're caught in this material world, but I'm going to see beyond this. So the purport says, one who manufactures names, forms, qualities, or paraphernalia pertaining to the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot understand Him, since He is beyond creation. The Supreme Lord is the creator of everything, and this means that He existed when there was no creation. In other words, His name, form, qualities are not materially created entities. They are transcendental always. Therefore, by our material concoctions, vibrations, and thoughts, we cannot ascertain the Supreme Lord. Pracheta Daksha herein offers prayers unto the transcendence, not to anyone within the material creation. Only fools and rascals think that God is a material creation. This is confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 11. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature and my supreme dominion over all that be. Therefore, one must receive knowledge from a person to whom the Lord has revealed Himself, like Srila Prabhupada and like our wonderful gurus that are available to you within ISKCON. There is no value in creating an imaginary name or form for the Lord. Sripad Sankaracharya was an impersonalist, but nevertheless he said, Narayana Paro Vyaktat. Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is not a person of the material world. We cannot assign Narayan a material designation, as the foolish attempt to do when they speak of poor Narayan. Narayan is always transcendental, beyond this material creation. How can He become Daridra Naranaya? Poverty is found within this material world, but in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as poverty. Therefore, the idea of Daridra Narayana is merely a concoction. Daksha very carefully points out that the material designations cannot be names of the worshipful Lord. One cannot properly understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead merely by picking up expressions from a dictionary. In praying to the Lord, Daksha does not wish material names and forms to the objects of his worship. Rather, he wants to worship the Lord, who existed before the creation of material dictionaries and names. As confirmed in the Vedas, the name, form, attributes, and paraphernalia of the Lord cannot be ascertained through a material dictionary. However, if one reaches the transcendental platform of understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes well acquainted with everything, both material and spiritual. This is confirmed in another Vedic mantra. If one can somehow or other, by the grace of the Lord, understand the transcendental position of the Lord, one becomes eternal. This is further confirmed by the Lord Himself in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 9. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Simply by understanding the Supreme Lord, one goes beyond birth, death, old age, and disease. Srila Sukadeva Goswami therefore advises Maharaj Parikshit in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, first chapter, text 5. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. So I like that text because it really gives a nice understanding that the modes and everything related to material nature is coming from Krishna, but it is not Krishna. Krishna is transcendental to the mode, and he should be worshipped as someone who's our savior, the person who's going to pull us out of this material entanglement and deliver us to the transcendental world, which is where we originally came from, which is where we're headed. So now we're stuck in the material modes. This is a cool book. It's mostly based on Sri Upanishad. It's only 3 chapters. The chapter before this is called Bad Karma, and the chapter before it is called God and the Law of Karma. So this book is set up in terms of laws, an infallible justice, meaning a justice that doesn't waver. The modes don't bend. The modes just have their way with us. We're the ones that have to change. The modes won't change. So we change by coming to bhakti, or following what Prabhupada calls the peace formula. The laws of nature work collectively, as well as individually. In the following brief but cogent statement, Srila Prabhupada explains that if we want to break out of the tangled web of collective karma that is wreaking havoc in present-day society, if we want peace, both collectively and individually, we need to take the Krishna conscious seriously. The great mistake of modern civilization is to encroach upon others' property as though it were one's own, and thereby create an unnecessary disturbance of the laws of nature. These laws are very strong. No living entity can violate them. One who is Krishna conscious can easily overcome the stringent laws of nature and thus become happy and peaceful in the world. As a state is protected by the Department of Law and Order, so the state of the universe, of which this earth is only an insignificant fragment, is protected by the laws of nature. This material nature is one of the different potencies of God, who is the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This earth is, therefore, the property of God. But we, the living entities, especially the so-called civilized human beings, are claiming God's property as our own, both as an individual and collective false conception. If you want peace, you have to remove this false conception from your mind and from the world. This false claim of proprietorship by the human race on earth is partially or wholly the cause of all disturbances of peace on earth. Foolish so-called civilized men are claiming proprietary rights on the property of God because they have now become godless. You cannot be happy and peaceful in a godless society. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is the factual enjoyer of all activities of the living entities, that he is the supreme Lord of all universes, and that he is the well-wishing friend of all beings. When the people of the world know this as the formula for peace, it is then that there will be peace and it will prevail. Therefore, if you want peace at all, you will have to change your consciousness into Krishna consciousness, both individually and collectively. By the simple process of chanting the holy name of God, this is the standard recognized process for achieving peace in the world. We therefore recommend that everyone becomes Krishna conscious by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And he concludes by saying, this is practical, simple, and sublime. 500 years ago, this formula was introduced in India by Lord Chaitanya, and it is now available throughout the world. Take to the simple process of chanting as mentioned above, realize your factual position by reading Bhagavad Gita, and reestablish your lost relationship with Krishna. Peace and prosperity will be the immediate worldwide result. So thank you for sticking with me. I know that was kind of clunky. We did a lot of reading. Thank you so much for your help. I had a couple little just points about that I have been told along the way of the modes of material nature. So the modes of material nature are predominate during different times of the day. Now we're trying to engage with practical experience that you guys have with the modes. So we wake up early. We wake up in the 3 a.m.s. Govardhan wakes up at 2:30 a.m. Dimitri wakes up at 2:45. I'm waking up right around 3:30, and then the rest of them wake up at 4 and race to get down here, because we all have to be down here at 4:30, dressed like this, ready to go. And the reason we're doing that is because the mode of goodness predominates in the morning. The mode of goodness, Brahma Muhurta especially, an hour and 37 minutes before sunrise. And you can feel it. I'm so active during the morning. I do so much seva. My mind is so clear. Tirtha Maharaj, the old temple president here, he was telling me that
if he looked at how fast he could reply to the huge amount of emails he got in the morning, depending at night, he was like some magnitude, 2 or 3 times more effective replying to emails in the morning. So the mode of goodness predominates, and you can feel it. We're waking up when everyone else is sleeping. The air is nice. Everything's just peaceful. And that's why Maharaj wants us waking up before 4:30, because as you get older and develop more Krishna consciousness, you have a tendency to chant your rounds before Mangalarti. Like Vijay's up at 1:30. He chants all his rounds early on. Govardhan has most of his rounds done by Mangalarti. I'm learning to do it as well. It's very powerful to get up when the mode of goodness predominates and do really nice spiritual activities. So then the mode of goodness, by kind of the end of morning, slips into the mode of passion. And you can see that because that's when people take their coffee, right? So people they want to wake up, they want to get active, right? So America takes their coffee, they get a quick buzz, they're bursting into Rajagun. Now they're in the mode of passion. Then they run around all day, doing your work, doing your nonsense activities, shopping, out and about, doing your appointments, busy, 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 busy. So the daytime is for the mode of passion. And then when night comes, darkness comes. You know, people start to go back home, people are tired, people start drinking alcohol, which propels you right into the mode of ignorance. You eat a big meal, dinner, and then you want to go to sleep, you watch TV, you go to sleep, and then maybe you and your wife do some nonsense activities that puts you further into the mode of ignorance. So you can see that practically throughout the day, right? Goodness in the beginning, mode of passion in the middle, ignorance in the end. And then when we fall asleep, like Prabhupada says, you completely forget who you are. You are in the mode of ignorance at that time. You don't even know who you are when you fall asleep. And that's what the mode of ignorance is. We don't even know who we are as spirit souls. You know, we're interested in very basic activities. So that's a good one. Also, weight is associated with that too. So like the mode of ignorance is very heavy. It's a very slow, heavy, lethargic feeling. The mode of passion is mixed. It's like this battle between, you know, the different airs and body natures. And the mode of goodness is very light. It's very easy. It's very nice. But we don't want to get attached to any one of these modes, not even the mode of goodness. I'm not really well versed in the traps of the mode of goodness. I know that you become prideful the more you spend time in the mode of goodness, and that pride can be a trap. Also, you can think that you're really happy, like life's good, I got this. But I remember when I was young, my dad was telling me that, like, you know, once you're up, then you come down, and then once you're down, you go up. So we heard that in the chapter. The modes are always competing with each other, you know, making you feel good, then making you feel bad, then making you feel anxious. So it's a never-ending cycle. Krishna told us that it's going to continue on forever. So we are the ones that have to escape this machine of the modes of material nature, because it'll continue happening, whether we want it or not. It'll just keep being born into other bodies. Might not know about Krishna consciousness, so you'll just pursue your desires, interacting with sense objects based on which mode is predominating within you. And so it's our duty to practice Krishna consciousness, to transcend these modes, to take instruction from spiritual masters who have transcended these modes. And in that way, we will not have to take birth again in this material world and be subjected to these puppeteers that are making all the decisions for us. So I thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you for reading the shlokas. Thank you for being here. There's some nice prasadam, and I wish you all the best. Hare Krishna. Jai.